It's that time. Your fix is here. College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Sherbert of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
Welcome one, welcome all. It is JC and Morgan. Hope you are doing well. We are doing this live on a Monday morning, which will be our regularly scheduled time for the most part, every now and then with the other things that JC and I do. Conflicts come about, but again, we're with you throughout the entire quote-unquote off-season, although there really is no such thing in college football, as you will be able to further validate when we get into our headlines and the JC5 and everybody and everything else. It is freezing cold in much of the country, including where JC resides in the windy city of Chicago. Pretty chilly here in my hometown of Atlanta as well, and it seems like everything in between, just Arctic cold conditions. Happy MLK Day, everybody. For a number of you, that's a holiday. And maybe you're taking care of some honey-do lists or whatever the case may be and still finding time to listen to us on every platform imaginable. Audio only, that would be Spotify, that would be iTunes, that would be Google Play. Video, to see our shining faces pop up on your screen. It is YouTube, it is Facebook, it is Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, at Morgan on Air, at JC Sherbert. How about Instagram? JC Sherbert. And yes, somebody else says Morgan on Air, so I'm Morgan on Air 22, as it turns out. Lots to get to, as I mentioned. And JC, it's funny, sometimes the timing of these things, I believe when we were on last week, maybe an hour after we signed off, the Saban news came down. I'm pretty sure it was relatively soon after we signed off. And needless to say, we didn't discuss it because we couldn't predict the future that Nick Saban, who had just led his team to yet another playoff, just led his team to another SEC championship, just had another great recruiting class coming, anticipating Jalen Milroe getting only better in another year at quarterback. And oh, by the way, because we had Shane Beamer on, South Carolina head football coach, on the ITG show, I think it was on Friday, and he shared something with us that I had not heard anywhere else. They had a coaches meeting the day before. When I say they, I mean the SEC. So every so often, all 14, soon to be 16, SEC coaches will go on a conference call and talk about whatever issues plague the sport and whatever issues that they hope to make better. Nick Saban was on that call. And talking about the same things that the other 13 coaches were. And then there was a scheduled meeting for Alabama, I think at 4 o'clock. And right around 3:55, I think, is, if you take everything at face value, is when Nick decided definitively he is not coming back. I say all that to point out he wrestled with this decision. It's clear. And while he doesn't want this to be, you never want to leave on a bitter note, whether it's an employer that did you wrong or whether it's a certain thing that's disturbing you. But there is no question, and I've shared on this show and others about my last conversation with Nick Saban, which was a little more than a year ago, November, where we sat in a coaches meeting about to broadcast an Alabama game, and for 25 of the 30 minutes we shared, it was all about what is wrong with college football right now. And he was holding back. He was not holding any punches back. And I sensed a man that clearly was not happy. And it's not as if it was, tilting the scale where Alabama, because everybody just assumes everybody's self-serving, right, in the sport of college football, and sometimes that's a very good assumption. It's not as if Alabama was falling backwards. Alabama was going to be a dominant force in college football, no matter what rules you set up. If Nick Saban's there, they're going to win. If Nick Saban's there, they're going to recruit. If Nick Saban's there, they're going to get some guys in the portal. And in a 12-team playoff, Nick Saban was going to be there virtually every year. So the game hadn't passed him by. He still relates to players and all these new things with college football. they didn't exactly damage Alabama. He just truly thought fundamentally a lot of the things that are going on right now are wrong. And I can tell you, JC, every coach I speak to in both the sports of football and basketball believe virtually the same thing. So he's certainly not alone. But that finally, I don't care what anybody says, was the final straw. Because he hadn't lost a mile an hour on his fastball or any desire to do all the things that you have to do to be a quality football coach. He's more than happy to kill it in recruiting and to go on countless talk shows to continue to publicize the brand. This was clearly a sign of the times, and we've talked about it with other coaches, be it Jay Wright, be it all the basketball coaches that have parted ways, and you've said it a number of times. It's no longer just about coaching ball, and a lot of these guys just want to coach ball. They don't want to have to play these games. So the news comes down. He clearly wrestled with it, and I think for a lot of people, forget about Alabama fans. For a lot of people, first you're stunned. Then I would say I was a little bit sad. I was mourning the fact that we just lost the greatest coach to ever do it. And so I get it. Like if you're a rival, you're like, well, I'm not sad. We just weakened Alabama, and now we get. I get it. If that's your stance, I understand. But as someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, I was a little bit sad. I'm going to miss the guy, and I didn't have that personal relationship with him. I love excellence, and we're losing Bill Belichick potentially if he doesn't take the Cowboy job, potentially in the NFL. I admire brilliance. I admire people who are outstanding in whatever they do. And we just, boom, boom, lost two of the best that have ever done it in the sport. So we'll start there, JC. Your reaction to when the news broke, again, not long after we signed off last week, and what you think it means, an end of an era now with Nick Saban out of the sport that he helped build during his time in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I picked a heck of a day. I had a flight out to South Carolina, and picked a heck of a day to be delayed by 7 hours at the airport. And look, O'Hare is far enough from where I live to where it made no sense to spend $120 and Uber back and then Uber back. So I just sat at the bar. Had to sip and be careful, the whole day. And all of a sudden, all this news just floods in, not just, Saban, but the other ones. Pete Carroll, oh my God.
Yeah.
You want to talk about two titans. And Pete sort of, when Pete left college football, he kind of passed the baton to Nick Saban in a lot of ways. And probably because Urban Meyer was, leaving Florida quickly at that point. So, I mean, it's sad, and you do respect those guys. I respect Nick Saban for a lot of reasons. I think that his approach to not only football but living your life is one we can all learn from. It's very disciplined. Don't get me wrong. It's tough, but I tell our kids, my stepsons, it's directly from Nick Saban. Every day you wake up and you have choices. And there's things that we don't want to do that we have to do. And there's things that we want to do that we can't do. And how you make those choices each and every day adds up to how successful you are or not. And that's kind of a little mental toughness thing there. And so he's right. You can sit there and listen to one of the speeches he gives, corporate, because he makes a bunch of money doing that, or his camps at Alabama where he's talking to high school players, things he says to his players. I'm fascinated because, there was an unofficial book that came out about him, and I don't know, always kind of people write books about people that, people write books about people and they don't talk to them or whatever. I don't get that. And he was upset about it. It was an interesting book, nonetheless. I read the whole thing. But when he writes his book, I'm going to be sure to read it. And by the way, Scott, just to let you know, Gamecock Talk is at 11. This is JC and Morgan, and we're broad college football. So jump back on at 11, brother, if you want to.
Yeah,
if
to
you don't
answer
wanna
your
hear
question, it affects everybody, not just one program in the SEC.
Say Alabama is on the Gamecock schedule next year, but no, this is a different branded show, and I get it because it kind of all goes on the same channel. But so don't worry, we're going to talk plenty. Game Mike's on today on the Gamecock show too, so we'll look forward to that. But it's tough, and whenever somebody like that who's not only helped, had great football players, but think about Alabama through the years. I mean, they've had problems just like everybody in terms of players getting in trouble from every now and then. Henry Ruggs was probably the saddest one because Henry didn't get in trouble in college, and then what happened to him was just a big, huge mistake. He didn't make the right choices, right? But by and large, he put out a lot of great citizens while he was there. That's not always easy to do when you're a powerhouse. I mentioned Urban Meyer earlier at Florida. That's not always easy to do because sometimes the more talented guys are the guys that are kind of knuckleheads that get in trouble. Alabama, they were so good with their evaluation process, and I told everybody this. It's not that they just went through all the 5 stars and signed them all. Many times Alabama would find a 5-star, and people talked about the Bama bump. Well, that was usually because the player was really good, and they took the right 5 stars. That's why they were so good each and every year. Toward the end, I don't know. Toward the end, did the portal hurt them a little bit as far as depth? Probably. Did the NIL thing, for a guy that's in his 70s, is that something he really wanted to deal with? Probably. We'll talk about that later. But, at the end of the day, it was a hell of a career, and I am curious to see what he does now, Mike, because I think he should go into your line of work. I think he should strongly consider going to game day. And I think we all, as fans, would love to see that because, frankly, if there's one coach that I want to hear what he has to say from an X's and O's and analysis standpoint, it's him. I mean, I'd love to sit in a room and watch film with the guy. I think I'd learn more in 30 minutes with him than I have my whole career. So that would be a blessing and a benefit for all of us fans if he does decide to go that route. And, I thought it was interesting. He said, well, they say don't start a broadcasting careir when you're 80s. Well, he's only 72. So, and a young one at that. So
very young.
We'll see what happens. I think that, as with any transition for a guy that's been there that long, there is some sadness that takes place. But I mean, just like when Spurrier hung it up in 2015 in the middle, everybody around the country was kind of sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like Will Ferrell, that skit, or Christopher Walken wants more cowbell. We all want more head ball coach. We all want more Saban. And, they don't make them like, and, one thing Saban always said, they don't make them like they used to, and they don't. And so as we move forward, it gets sad to see some of these iconic guys who transcend the sport, get out of the way. And it's extra tough, I think, to our psyche in a certain way because there's been so much change in the sport. So, I mean, next year it's going to be unrecognizable. And then to lose Nick Saban, you're like, oh, wow, he was kind of a constant. So that's tough. So we'll see what happens.
That's a great point you make about it's a different era. And like when I look at, and this is not to take away anything from the new wave of great coaches, a couple of which just got hired, and we're obviously going to talk about that too. There are now shortcuts to becoming the head coach of a premier program. A lot of guys are getting jobs based solely on the ability of talent acquisition, let's call it. Okay. Brand name, their ability to manipulate the portal and NIL. This is going to sound whatever. I don't really care. I mean, hell, you and I are not that old, to be honest with you, but we're old enough to remember you didn't get to Saban's place in history, Spurrier's place in history, Belichick's place in history, Pete Carroll's place in history. You couldn't just charm your way into Hall of Fame like greatness and those type of opportunities, you had to really first establish yourself in the X's and O's world. You had to pay your dues. You had to work a number of jobs in order to just continue to climb the ladder. And then you had to prove that, quite frankly, you were smarter than the other guys that were doing it. And now there's this backdoor channel of guys who are like, yeah, I mean, I know X's and O's, kind of, sort of. And I took this from this guy, and I stole this from that guy. And we don't have like a lot of innovators, I would say, compared to what we used to have. Like Nick Saban's an innovator. Steve Spurrier was an innovator. And it wasn't just taking, well, he runs a 4-3. Well, he runs a 3-3-5. Well, Spurrier runs a spread. And it's the adjustments that you make in the middle of the game. As I've often said, you can steal the barbecue recipe, and that's in that line of work. You might not be quite as good as the original chef, but you can kind of almost duplicate it. See, in football, in the course of a 3.5-hour game, you don't just stick to the script. That recipe changes based on events that happen in the middle of the game. And these are guys that were so far ahead of the rest of the pack in knowing how to make those changes and what to do. And that's where a lot of coaches that kind of take the shortcuts, they struggle. Because they, again, they have marketed themselves well, or their agency has, or Jimmy Sexton has, and they know how to sell. They're kind of like used car salesmen in terms of getting players, so they can get you a good roster, but they really don't know in-game coaching. And I think there's a lot of that goes on now, and I think we're losing some of the great, true minds of the sport. Now, some of you might roll your eyes at that and say, come on already. Enough with that. Let's move on to the new page. I'm just telling you, it's different for a lot of these guys. No disrespect to any of the names we're going to talk about that are about, and some of these names are actually very much in line with what I'm talking about. Like Kalen DeBoer and Jed Fish, they didn't take any shortcuts. Go look at those resumes. Go do a Wikipedia on DeBoer and Fish. I mean, DeBoer. This drove me crazy, JC. I'm driving around. I had a basketball game at Auburn on Saturday. And I'm driving, God knows where, in eastern Alabama, western Georgia, somewhere. I'm crossing I-85 toward Columbus, and I'm listening to a national show, and this guy's talking about the hire of Kalen DeBoer. And, of course, you've got some people saying Brian Harsin. That's such an ignorant take, but whatever. And he's saying, yeah, he won all these titles at NAIA, but nobody cares. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. You're wrong, sir. That means a lot, because here's the deal. Coaches that win championships at places like an NAIA school, you want to know the difference of an NAIA school or an FCS school or even a Group 5 school where a lot of these guys like Fish and DeBoer had success before they got their quote-unquote big breaks, is that you don't have an advantage in talent. You don't. That's why some of the best coaching candidates always come from the MAC, because every one of those schools has the same deficiencies. They don't have NIL money. They don't have a great recruiting blueprint geographically. So it's like my Jimmies and Joes are the same as your Jimmies and Joes. Let's see who's the better coach. Whereas in a lot of college football cases, it's just, I got a loaded roster, you don't. I'm going to beat you by 30 tonight. There's nothing you can do about it. So when a Kalen DeBoer in Sioux Falls goes 67-3 and wins 3 titles, it's not because Sioux Falls had $1 million more NIL money. It's because he just outcoached the competition, right? And so that's, to me, when I look at great coaches, Nick Saban won wherever he was. Michigan State, LSU. You go back to his early years as an assistant in all these different places, building block after building block after building block. Jed Fish was a guy who didn't even play football. He was a tennis player. He was a tennis player who went to Florida for one reason, so that he hoped he would get a chance to be a grad assistant for Steve Spurrier, and kept writing letters and kept doing everything he could just to get his foot through the door, and he did it. And then he kept grinding and grinding, job after job after job after job. So these guys didn't take any shortcuts, and they proved that they're with equal talent, they can win. And of course, the case of Fish, He takes a mess in Arizona and turns it around. In the case of DeBoer, he takes a mess at Washington and wins 21 consecutive games and has their team 4 quarters away from a national championship. So I don't know why anybody would question either one of those hires, but it's out there. It's out there because, JC, how many – I talk about this all the time with other openings, and you think like the athletic director has some magic wand and he's got the snake oil salesman special that he can convince somebody who doesn't like your job to take your job. A lot of Alabama fans came in with the attitude of we can get whoever we want because we're Alabama. And if Alabama can't, who can, right? So Steve Sarkisian should have walked away from Texas, but he didn't. Dan Lanning should have walked away from Oregon, but he didn't. Lane Kiffin, who I'm not convinced, based on his last stint in Tuscaloosa, knowing what I know, I'm not convinced a lot of people were ready to pull the trigger on that. But I'm also not convinced Lane Kiffin was ever going to leave Ole Miss. But a lot of Alabama fans are convinced they should have been able to do it, and they didn't. And some even think that Kirby's smart. How dare you not leave Georgia and come to Alabama? The fact of the matter is you couldn't get whoever you wanted. The fact of the matter is this is almost an impossible job to follow a guy who won 6 national titles. But the fact of the matter is you got a hell of a coach in Kalen DeBoer. This is not Brian Harsin. Look at the 2 resumes, stack them up. It's just not. Oh, by the way, Ryan Grubb, who turned down the Alabama job as an OC. Nick Saban asked him to be his OC, and Grubb said, no, I'm going to stay at Washington. Well, they get him too. So I think Alabama made all the right moves here. But whether or not it works out, who the heck knows? I'm sorry, I went off on 5 tangents there. JC, Senator from Illinois, you have the floor.
No, it's perfectly okay. You're right. And I have some things about this Harsin, DeBoer. Just some things. I do think Kalen DeBoer can learn some lessons from Brian Harsin. I don't think they're similar in coaches at all. I think, Brian Harsin was pretty average as a coordinator at Texas, pretty average at Arkansas State, where up until, whoever it was before Butch Jones got there, that program was winning and sending coaches. I mean, Hugh Freeze coached there, Gus Malzahn coached there, Blake Anderson coached there. I mean, it was, it was kind of a cradle of, it was kind of like App State for a while, or a cradle of coaches for a while, just Cincinnati, if you will, Cincinnati and Northeast Arkansas. So I was never convinced that was the guy. I thought, look, Dan Hawkins got it going at Boise. Or Houston Nutt actually did. And then Dan Hawkins took over him and won. And then Chris Peterson was next level and actually was a proven guy. And how hard is it to win at Boise? I mean, they fired a guy this year and they won a conference championship. So maybe it's a little harder than we thought. But I think this, and you look around college football, Mike, and you made a great point. Look at who's like winning and doing more with quote unquote less. In other words, programs that don't necessarily recruit in the top 10. And for a few years, it was basically 2 guys, PJ Fleck and Matt Campbell at Minnesota and Iowa State. And it's kind of funny they're still there. I don't know why, but they're still there. Maybe look at that Arizona job if I were one of them. I mean, Arizona obviously probably can't pay as much as Minnesota, but you look at it and, so who's winning kind of at places that you go, wow, they're winning. Well, Lance Leopold, he coached D2 ball and made a winding journey. Chris Kleiman at Kansas State, which, after the Ron Prince fiasco for 3 years, Bill Snyder had to come back and take the job over again and kind of played out the string. And I think a lot of times, a lot of us were like, well, nobody's going to win there but Bill Snyder. Kleiman comes in and they're winning championships and 9-10 games a year. I mean, that's Kansas State. That's a hard job. Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz has won 208 football games as a head coach. Started at Blinn Junior College. Central Missouri for 12 years. Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern, Tulane, now Houston. Finally at Power 5, but at a newcomer. And I guarantee you they're going to win. So who's winning? I mean, Kalen DeBoer was that kind of guy. Washington's talented. Washington had a lot of talent, but I mean, it's not like they recruited as much talent as Alabama or Georgia or
He did it at
Michigan,
Fresno
Ohio
too.
State. And he won at Fresno. Now that's a job. Yeah, Fresno, they're usually pretty good. But look, I mean, back to the Pat Hill days, right? But man, I mean, you want to talk about the guys that are at places that are hard to win that are actually winning, or these guys that have worked their way up. You know, if Brian Kelly's last two jobs hadn't been Notre Dame and LSU, he'd be in that category as well because he was at Grand Valley State for 10 years. And I don't know why. I think a lot of its agents, a lot of its athletic directors are sort of political people. Greg Byrne, to me, made a very good hire and hired the best football coach. I'll say this right now. I think Kalen DeBoer is a better football coach than Mike Norvell or Steve Sarkisian. I'll just be honest. And it's in his track record. He's 104-12. You just don't roll up that kind of record and not know what you're doing. There are some pitfalls to this job, but unlike when you hired Mike Price and you're like, oh, well we're going to revolutionize the Alabama offense, and the guy's done a great job at Washington State, which he did. We talked to Ryan Leaf about that. But if you look at his year-to-year record, he wasn't 104-12. You know, Mike Shula, native son, we'll hire him. You know, they could have gone and hired somebody from the NFL that used to coach at Bama. There are a lot of them. Brian Daboll or somebody, like they did with Ray Perkins. You could have hired, you know, the up-and-comer from down the road, like they did with Bill Curry when they plucked him away from Georgia Tech. You know, they didn't do that. They hired the best football coach they possibly could hire. And I'll take my chances with that as kind of the guy that follows the guy more so than the name. You know, Will Muschamp said something one time that made sense when he was at South Carolina, talking about how he wasn't the big name for the job. And he said he told Ray Tanner when he got hired, he's like, let's win football games, not the press conference. Unfortunately, Will didn't win enough football games, but that always resonated with me. Like, we have so much hype in the sport to the nth degree because recruiting, social media, rumors, it is a 365-day-a-year gig, right, to be plugged into this monster. But at the end of the day, the hype without substance means very, very little. There's not a lot of guys winning based on just that hype and the perception. That perception matters in this sport more than just about any other sport on earth, because you're determining a champion still by a selection committee. Now there's only 12 spots. You used to do it by vote. Polls, people vote in the polls. They matter. Recruiting is based on perception a lot. You got to have the perception out there that you're an up-and-coming program that can fill kids' needs. It's getting away from that to a certain extent, but it's still awfully present. You can see it by fan reaction. I used to think, you know, message boards at South Carolina or Florida or wherever were, you know, I was like, these people are easily triggered. Before they hired DeBoer, I go to the Alabama message board. This is a complete disaster. Greg Byrne should be ashamed. Unprepared and outmatched.
Unprepared.
We're striking out all over the place. It's an unmitigated disaster.
Right.
Roll Tide. I mean, I'm like, hey, you guys hadn't been through this in about 18 years, have you?
Well, that's the thing. That's
know.
And again, Bama fans who have been around long enough remember Mike DeBose, remember Mike Shula, remember Mike Price. I think they decided to stop hiring guys named Mike, even though we're great people, I promise you. And then, you know, of course, Greg Byrne, who's a buttoned up and very well respected AD, but he didn't hire Nick Saban, right? Just like Jeremy Foley at Florida didn't hire Steve Spurrier. And so there's a new level of pressure that you can't even imagine to get this right. Because if you don't, it's probably your job as an AD.
And you didn't get blown away with a name. You didn't
get blown away with a name.
Tennessee did a few years ago with, oh my God, let me stick my finger in that. Even A&M this year. Even A&M. I mean, they had decided to hire Stoops, right? And then they went, well, I guess it's our fans would want Elko. Bama didn't do that. Byrne sat down and he hired the best coach he could hire.
And that's
And a guy in the chat row points out he's 5-0 against Sark and Lanning the last 2 years.
That's right. That's a great point. By the way, chat row, for those that are just listening, when we do this show, the video version, we encourage you to check it out on YouTube. Despite our not so aesthetically pleasing faces from time to time, we have what's called chat row on the right side, so people are allowed to comment questions. Some of you are getting the hang of this. Questions sometimes are better than just random comments, and it almost serves as another mailbag that we have on jcandmorgan.com. Like Charles asked, what's one of the Charles that's chiming in, what's an acceptable win total for Alabama now? I think all that's changed, JC, because now it's, did you get to the playoff or not? It's almost like basketball. Did you get to the NCAA? Nobody remembers a Final Four team or a national championship team in basketball. Well, how many games did you win in the regular season? That's going to be secondary to, did you get to the playoff and how did you do in the playoff? That's how programs like Alabama are going to judge success. Yeah, you want to win every game in the regular season. And yeah, you want to beat your rival in Auburn, and you want to win SEC championships. All that obviously still matters. But the answer to that question, Charles, I think is you have to make the playoff every year with 12. You have to make the playoff every year as the Alabama head coach. That at bare minimum is the standard. If you don't, and believe you me, you look at that schedule, and they already lost Bond today to the portal, or maybe not today, but the last couple of days. It's not an automatic that Alabama's going to make even with 12 teams. It's not automatic they're going to make it every year. But the moment you don't, all hell is going to break loose on Kalen DeBoer and Alabama's administration. And it's going to be, Nick Saban would have been in a playoff every time with 12 teams, every time. He almost was with 4 teams. So that, to me, is the answer to the question to start. They're still going to expect SEC championships. They're still going to expect some undefeated seasons. They're still going to go freak-out mode every time they lose a single game. But you have to make the playoff every year. Harrison says, thoughts on Saban having 100% access to the Bama program? Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when Terry Bowden took over at Auburn, and Pat Dye kept an office in the football building. Yeah. I believe at the time it was at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I don't know where they have it now, and that never sat well with Terry Bowden, because Pat Dye was a god at Auburn, and here's this new guy, Buster Brown, coming in, and anytime he loses a game, and it took a while for him to lose one, well, Pat Dye might have just walk down the halls. I'll tell you what they should have done. They should have gone for it on 4th and 1. That's what they should have done. Like that.
Somebody call Brother Oliver and get him down.
Exactly. Yeah. Call Billy Oliver.
That's Auburn. Yeah. Look, I think people make too much of these situations, because I think what Saban's going to do is roll into like an ambassador's job, which is what Steve Spurrier does at Florida.
Right.
Which is what, he did at South Carolina for a while. Urban Meyer, Will Muschamp, when he was hired at Florida, said Urban's got complete access. He's going to be around, and it really has never made a big difference. Most coaches are not Nick Saban. I'll say that, but most coaches are not going to step on any toes, and I think Nick's professional enough to where
I do too. And
DeBoer's kind of he's not a guy. I'm sure he's an extremely confident person. You don't win 104 of 160 football games without being confident. Run the offense, he does. But he's also strikes you as kind of a laid back guy. Oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah, coach can come by practice. But there are some times when the legend is a little too much. I'm trying to think. Clemson, when Danny Ford got forced out, he was mad, so he didn't come around. But then once he went to Arkansas, got fired, and came back, Tommy Bowden and Dabo had him around all the time.
Vince Dooley was the AD at Georgia.
Yeah, that was
so talk about coaching in the shadows of a legend. Not only is Vince Dooley around telling Jim Donnan what he's doing wrong, but he also has the ability to fire you. Talk about intimidating.
How about all those guys that work for Barry Alvarez for the Godfather?
Right, in Wisconsin,
like 3-4 coaches. So
You want to have access to the legend. I don't know if you want him walking around every day and the fans see that and they're like, boy, we'll never have him again. You're going to say the right things. Oh, of course, you're welcome anytime. Come to practice. Yeah, you want to. But I do think that look, everybody has a little bit of insecurity deep down. And it's hard not to be the least bit insecure around Nick Saban, who did things that, again, in our lifetime, I don't think will ever be done by another head football coach. So it's an interesting question.
I look at basketball too. It's two situations there. Like at Duke, you see Krzyzewski around, but you don't. You know, but at North Carolina, Roy's always there. You know, and here's the difference too. I think sometimes it matters if you went to school there. Like Steve Spurrier. Nobody's going to tell the head Gator, you know, don't come by practice.
Who won a Heisman there?
Yeah, his name is on the field. You know, he'd be there regardless if he used to coach there or not. Roy Williams is a Tar Heel. You know,
right?
He walked away from the Kansas. I'll never forget. He quoted the fight songs like, "When I die, I'll be Carolina dead." After he finally took the job and won big at North Carolina, Hubert Davis is his friend. Krzyzewski did not go to Duke. He is a graduate of Army. And, probably is a little more, even though his pupil coaches there, is a little more hands-off. So sometimes, Fulmer at Tennessee, there's a disaster.
That was a disaster.
When he got back involved,
Well, you remember how that happened. I mean, the fans are like, wait, we need a true Tennessee man to make this hire. Well, that true Tennessee man gave you Jeremy Pruitt, and that was beyond a disaster. I don't know. I need a stronger word.
Well, that's how, they say, and I like Coach Fulmer because he's kind of the godfather of modern recruiting in a lot of ways. He kind of started all this recruiting stuff back in the day, and I'm thankful for having an industry I could make money in that I enjoyed doing. But ask Johnny Majors sometime how Philip Fulmer ended up with the coaching job the first time around.
Oh, yeah.
I think he called him Brutus Judas. Look it up. Type Johnny Majors, Brutus Judas, Philip Fulmer. So that did not surprise me one bit that old Phil came back in.
Old Phil found his way.
Twisted the knife a little bit.
Yeah,
That's just how he rolled. But
that's how he rolled.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see.
A good point by Eazy-E, Quantrell. All you guys have got some good stuff, and we'll touch on those from time to time. We do got to get our first break in. The JC5 is coming up next, and some of that, of course, will have to do with this. There's also latest portal news. What would a show be without some portal power? And we might even, if we can find time, sneak in some Five and Dime. A lot of you folks have missed some of that. We'll explain what that is for those of you new to the program. It is a manic Monday on MLK Day. Part of the Chief Network. This is the JC and Morgan Show. Back after a quick break.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
South Carolinians, this message is for you, as well as for people in Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. If you think you may need work done to your roof or a new roof altogether, there's one simple name to remember: Elite Roofing and Restoration. South Carolina native Jeremy Johnson has been helping people in the South make sure they have the very best people checking on and building new roofs for over 25 years. Fully licensed, bonded, and insured, they provide the best service possible. Call or email today, 678-781-1998. That's 678-781-1998, or you can go to EliteRoofingGA.com. Schedule a no-hassle free inspection today. Wind damage, hail damage, or just wear and tear. Don't settle for second best. Let Jeremy Johnson and Elite Roofing and Restoration take care of it all for you today.
All right, we are back. JC and Morgan, episode number 226, if you're scoring at home. And yes, presented in part by the fine folks at Elite Roofing, no matter where you're listening, whether you're in Georgia, where they're now based, or South Carolina, where they were based, or North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee. Jeremy Johnson and company will take great care of you. You see the number at the bottom of your screen. Again, I've used them a number of times for a free estimate. They also do restoration work too, not just roofing. But if you need a new roof, by golly, call them now, 678-781-1998, 678-781-1998. That's Jeremy Johnson, Elite Roofing and Restoration. We've been waiting on it, as I always like to say, and it's never been more true. We could use a morale booster right now in this great nation, and then the morale of America very often depends heavily on the upcoming subjects provided by one J.C. Sherbert in that dome of his. It is time for the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
I will say this, while I completely agree with you that Kalen DeBoer is...
On football and men's basketball hires, you can screw everything else up. You're not going anywhere. They're going to love you. And if you make one bad football hire, well, then a lot of people are going to blame it on the AD. And as I pointed out a million times, being the athletic director at a place like Alabama or LSU and hiring a football coach is a heck of a lot different than Mississippi State or South Carolina, or I would even say Florida now. Like, it's just different. You don't get pick of the litter. And in this case, Alabama didn't have pick of the litter either, because Jimmy Sexton is out there working all the phones. He's representing everybody in the whole scenario. He has become the most powerful player in college football. And most people couldn't, if you walked into a donut shop and you were in line getting your dozen, sprinkles and jelly donuts, you wouldn't know who the hell he was. I've met him one time. And the guy that I used to work with on some SEC football, Barrett Jones, is his neighbor in a suburb of Memphis. But this guy is Scott Boras on steroids. He's got every major coach, and you should have known when Kalen DeBoer hired him over the last 12 months, Kalen was ready to move. That was a dead giveaway. But he's out there going, okay, you're going to be a candidate. Let's let this thing drag on. I'm going to get you a raise, you a raise, you a raise, you a raise. And that's exactly what happened. The big winner in all of this was Jimmy Sexton. Make no mistake about it.
It happens with every opening in the SEC. Now, I respect him, and I like him. I've never met him. I know some people that know him and say he's a great guy.
He never does interviews.
It's like a character out of a John Grisham novel. Really. I mean, right down to being from Memphis and riding around a private jet, being an attorney. He's not an attorney.
Right.
That's something people don't know. He did not go to law school, Jimmy Sexton. But yeah, man, he's just like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he's working a cash register. All right, Sarkeesian for $4.95. That'll be that. That'll be that. That'll be that. But I do question whether that's healthy for the sport. with one guy
Yeah.
being the godfather / gatekeeper of all these coaching hires. But I mean, nothing's going to change there as long as he's driving the market.
We can't even get we can't even get organized to set rules in NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah,
You think we're going to get a rule that does antitrust for agents running game around all these ADs?
It's just going to take somebody that's as good as he is, and nobody
exactly
is.
Nobody is
close. It's not even close. And so, hats off to Jimmy Sexton again. But I think at some point he'll become, because right now fans just sort of laugh it off. I think down the road, somebody somewhere they're gonna get a little fed up with it, and he won't be as popular as possible. But I would love. I know he doesn't do interviews, doesn't do that. I would love to see a 30 for 30 on this guy.
I think there will be.
He's fascinating. It's fascinating.
It is a fascinating story. If you just if you do a deep dive, and maybe we'll do that sometime on the show, on his whole background and how this whole thing came about, because it's different than Scott. Scott Boras was I don't want to say a great player, but he was a minor leaguer, I think, and he kind of used that to his advantage. The way Sexton was born into this agency, power agent world is a little bit different. But just to put a bow on the Greg Byrne thing, look, this is either going to work or it's not going to work. And there's no long timetable in Tuscaloosa. They have a track record of firing coaches within 3 years if it's not working out. And I'm just telling you, to go back to Charles' question on chat row, what's acceptable? You have to make the playoff every year, bare minimum. I don't know if you can survive not making a 12-team playoff at Alabama. And Greg Byrne will be judged on this hire first and foremost. And is it fair? No, because first off, you couldn't get whoever you wanted. There were some coaches that clearly used this opportunity as leverage and wanted no part of following a legend in a stacked SEC. But if it doesn't work out, you do what every school does. You hire another coach. And that doesn't mean Greg Byrne's not a good AD, but that's the way some fans will take it. Oh, he missed on that one, therefore that wasn't, Greg Byrne doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Every great AD has made bad hires. Every one of them. Jeremy Foley used to say, you just want to bat 500 or better. Because remember now, Jeremy, who at the time was known as the godfather of ADs in the SEC. I mean, he hired Billy Donovan. He had Florida winning national titles after he hired Urban Meyer. He did not hire Spurrier. He inherited him. But he also missed on Ron Zook and Jim McElwain and some might say even Mike White. He missed on coaches. He went through a handful of baseball coaches. You make educated decisions and you hope they work, but you're not going to bat 1,000 as an AD on hiring coaches. You're just not.
I can't think, Mike. I'm trying to think of a legendary coach that's hung it up where a hire like this has been made. Like a guy with unprecedented success. So I'm thinking back through. Spurrier leaves, Zook. Man, had never been a head coach.
Failed.
Urban Meyer leaves, Muschamp. Never been a head coach.
Failed.
Bobby Bowden leaves. Jimbo had never been a head coach. It worked out, but it wasn't like Jimbo was 104-12 in his career.
No, it got off to a good start, and then it failed late. Yeah,
and failed. Bear Bryant was Ray Perkins. Fulmer was Lane Kiffin, which could have been good at the time.
1 year,
wasn't.
7-6.
Pete Carroll was also Lane Kiffin. I'm thinking Joe Paterno was Bill O'Brien. They couldn't beg anybody to take that job.
Right.
At the time, I'm just thinking back through, and I'm like, wow, this hire reminds me of.
What's that?
It's your favorite fan base, the Hurricanes.
Okay.
When Jimmy Johnson left and Dennis Erickson got the job.
Uh-huh.
And Dennis had the great run at Washington State.
Right.
He had no ties to South Florida.
Nope.
But he kept it on. He kept on keeping on.
He won 2 titles. Jimmy won one.
Until he got to the 49ers job or the Seahawks 49ers and left. Went back home. That's what kind of hire this reminds me of, where it's a great program. It's on the roll. Saban's obviously been there longer than Jimmy Johnson. He hangs it up, and then you just go hire the best guy, and he may be from way the hell off where your footprint is, but he's a big time winner. That would be the closest thing I could think of this. I mean, Mac Brown, Charlie Strong replaced him.
Fail.
A lot of it's usually a guy with ties, a guy that's a name in the area, or something like that. Nobody even knew who Kalen DeBoer was till Washington beat Oregon in the championship game. Everybody talks about Dan Lanning, because he used to be in the SEC. Well, Kalen DeBoer's beat his butt twice, 3 times. He's 3-0.
Yeah.
I think the Dennis Erickson. That's the only thing I can think of. Lou Holtz was Bob Davie at Notre Dame. That's the only thing I can really think of to kind of, where a powerhouse team kind of still at the top, the guy hangs it up or goes someplace else, and then you hire just a dude that you wouldn't even expect, but he is the best coach you could hire. So I think that's interesting.
Timing is everything. Again, I only vote on 2 things, the Heisman and the Coach of the Year. I voted Kalen DeBoer 1. By the way, I had Fish 2. And now they're both somewhere else. Kind of funny how that works. Timing is everything. 2 years ago, you could never make this hire. You never would have hired Kalen DeBoer. He would never even be on a list of the top 20 candidates. But it's who's hot at the right time. And then when you're hot enough, people are forced to look at the rest of your track record. And again, what he did in Sioux Falls does matter. Absolutely. Anybody who says it doesn't matter, I don't think you understand coaching, because what he's doing is showing dominance, taking a program with the same Jimmys and Joes that everybody else had, except he's winning titles and the other guys aren't. That said a lot to me. I think it's the right hire. You make up a great point. I never thought about that. The success to fail ratio on replacing a legend, it ain't real good. It's just not. It's not very good. So
I said that about Dennis because I'm trying to give Alabama fans some encouragement here that because I think the SEC fan mindset, they don't give a damn about Sioux Falls. I mean, you don't know how many times a day I hear, well, they don't have any SEC experience,
right?
And you do have some places that Auburn that they'll bring a coach in from someplace else and demand that they've got a staff pick for him. And a lot of times those guys have been good at other places, but they're not fits where they are. So it just makes sense to me. I didn't, when we planned the JC5 today, I didn't really think about that. But as we've moved along, I've been like, man, this is actually a pretty good hire. And it's different. It's different. It's not just the same old, let's get a former assistant, keep it going or whatever. It's new and it's fresh. And if I'd have bothered to look up Greg Burns' track record, because I get him confused with his dad, who was president of A&M, I probably could have learned a little something before we got on.
I think it's the right hire. I think it's a logical hire. I think it, but can I sit here and tell you it's going to work? Have no idea. And I stop pretending that I do, because I see too many of these that you think and you just don't know. And the landscape has changed. It's 100% changed. Maybe the most impressive stat when I was reading off Saban's accolades, JC, I think he had 10 number 1 ranked recruiting classes. This goes back to when you were covering it at ESPN. 10 number 1 ranked recruiting classes during his 17 years. That might be the most impressive number of all. I mean, when is that going to be done again? Kirby's trying to. He's pretty close to being on his way, but shoot, that's tough.
The 1 year they weren't the composite number 1, Mike, and that's what I go by because it's a consensus.
Right.
That was the year where they switched the signing date, and I think that's the one time in recruiting, and I don't know if somebody got fired or not, where they got kind of caught with their pants down because nobody expected 90% of the top players, all commits, to sign, and the schools did a good job. So whereas Alabama used to go in and flip 5 guys in January and get the number 1 class, they didn't have access to those guys.
Right.
Next year, though, everybody was committed and signed early, and they had the number 1 class again. So, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, before we go to break, one more quick question from Chat Rail Quantrell. Do you think part of the reason Norvell stayed at FSU is because he had a good idea that FSU would be out of the ACC by 2025? I'm not sure Norvell was ahead of DeBoer on the list. And if there was a reason why I thought Norvell would jump ship, it's because the uncertainty of FSU's situation. Like I think he's got a great thing going in Tallahassee, and I think it's a great fit. But the unstable nature of the future of where that program's going to be and what the ACC is going to look like, and then do you go to the Big Ten? Do you go to the SEC? And where I could see where a Norvell would at least have a wandering eye for a job like Alabama. But I don't. We'll never know for sure who got the first phone call, the second phone call. It all's channeled through agents and everything else. You're never going to know that for sure. But I'm not sure if DeBoer wasn't ahead of Norvell. Now, whether or not Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, these are different questions. But I would be fairly confident there was at least one rejection in the whole search. I would not be surprised. Like a phone call that you make that you know he's probably going to say no, but you got to at least make the phone call. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But no one's ever going to come out and say that publicly for obvious reasons. All right, we've got to take a timeout. We'll come back. Final segment on the way, including the latest portal news. And if we have time, a little five and dime. It's JC and Morgan.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. Site Pro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. Site Pro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call Site Pro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
South Carolinians, this message is for you, as well as for people in Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. If you think you may need work done to your roof or a new roof altogether, there's one simple name to remember: Elite Roofing and Restoration. South Carolina native Jeremy Johnson has been helping people in the South make sure they have the very best people checking on and building new roofs for over 25 years. Fully licensed, bonded, and insured, they provide the best service possible. Call or email today, 678-781-1998. That's 678-781-1998, or you can go to eliteroofingga.com. Schedule a no-hassle, free inspection today. Wind damage, hail damage, or just wear and tear. Don't settle for second best. Let Jeremy Johnson and Elite Roofing and Restoration take care of it all for you today.
Hey, this is Mike Morgan, and like many of you, I love staying active. It makes me feel better. It helps me enjoy a better life. But whether you're a world-class athlete or someone just keeping the dream alive like me, you'll want to make sure you have someone who can handle the injuries that are going to arise. That's where the world-renowned Dr. Michael Hatrack of Synergy Sports Wellness and Synergy Release Sports come into play. He's been my guy for nearly a decade, and he has served thousands of people, including over 400 NFL players, over a career that spans 47 years. Yeah, he's that good. And his staff's personalized biomechanical treatments and therapies can handle it all. Back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain. We all know the injuries, but few know the solutions the way Dr. Hatrack and his terrifically trained staff do. I've seen others. No one delivers the results the way they do. That's why people from all over the country come to Synergy's 2 Georgia locations, Buckhead and Alpharetta. Dr. Hatrack has trained a team of chiropractors in his proprietary technique that has been proven to yield life-changing outcomes, from professional athletes to the Joe Schmoes of the world like, well, me. Check out the website to set up an appointment today, SynergyReleaseSports.com. That's Synergy with an S, ReleaseSports.com. You can also find a link for them on our website, jcandmorgan.com. Let the incredible staff at Synergy take care of you so you can reach your wellness goals. All right, back for the final segment here on JC and Morgan. Don't forget the website, jcandmorgan.com. Latest portal news over the last 24 hours, Cam Ward, who flirted with the NFL drafts I'm reading, he's got no chance of being a first-round pick and probably not a second-round pick. He is going to, in fact, go from Washington State to the U, try to enhance his draft stock. It is a loaded year for quarterbacks. Loaded. You're going to see guys now with J.J. McCarthy coming in the mix as well that you thought were really good and first-round talent that are going to be taken in like the second and third round. Same thing with wide receivers, loaded at both positions this year in the NFL draft. And our guy Pete Thamel reporting Jim Harbaugh is meeting with the Chargers today. It just seems like with a quarterback already in place and Herbert and an organization that has been underachieving, that would be an ideal landing spot if Harbaugh is ready to go. I think he makes the jump. We'll see what happens there.
But the Chargers have been kind of knocking on the door, man. And that coach they had hired, he was supposed to be like one of the, I guess, the whiz kid or whatever. Or maybe he was I don't know. Anyway, some young guy. I mean, he's one of those cookie cutter, the quintessential NFL head coach these days. They look like they're 17.
Analytics guy.
Yeah.
Fourth down from my own 32. Let's go for it.
Just did not work. And, so they need to do something. I'm still mad at that franchise for leaving San Diego behind.
I would be too.
They literally Ron Burgundy that whole city.
Yeah, they did. And I can tell you this, doing a game there in beautiful SoFi Stadium, that's always going to be Rams territory.
Yeah. Well, the Rams
you are
there.
second fiddle.
The Chargers were like there for a cup of coffee in the 60s and then moved down I-5.
Right.
I mean, there were more Chargers fans. Crazy thing. I used to go to Las Vegas a lot. The Chargers were the most popular team in Vegas because it's a shorter drive over to San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like Falcons fans in South Carolina or Alabama or whatever. So it's just all messed up. But, I still think that franchise has had enough talent to win. And if Harbaugh can do it, you take the San Diego Chargers to Super Bowl glory, brother. That's an achievement. And then he could just go to the beach or the mountains. I don't know. What do you think? Harbaugh probably more of a mountains guy.
He doesn't strike me as a beach guy, more of a mountain guy.
Lake house guy,
Yeah, I could see him like getting a condo in Greenland. He's a weird dude.
Like chopping wood all the time. But that'd be a heck of a way because, he's 60. You probably look at it and get out by 65 while you got your health and young and enjoy your money. And he's got, 7 kids,
Buy a pet duckbill platypus just because he's Jim Harbaugh to be different. When everybody else gets a dog, he goes off the radar.
What are you doing, Jim? Walking my platypus.
Walking my platypus. What's it to you? Who's got it better than me?
Whenever you ask him a question, he scowls like he doesn't, like he's trying to decipher what you're yeah. We're happy we won the national championship.
If ever there was like a delicate genius, like he's just different. I was talking to one of our avid listeners in Michigan. We got a few Michigan fans that listen across the country, and one of them here in Atlanta, and he's like, "You guys nailed it. Like, he's not a bad dude. He's just weird. He's just different."
I love the guy.
Oh, I do too. I mean, he's
a winner.
We've been proponents of Jim Harbaugh when they were losing to Ohio State 5 years in a row, and everybody wanted him fired. That wasn't the take on this show. But he is different. But I think he's gone. Sharon Moore gets the job. They don't have to look very far. You've got your coach in place. You keep Minter as the DC, and you try to keep it rocking and rolling, although they're going to lose a ton of talent. Losing McCarthy was the final death blow there. All right, real quick. 5 and dime. American Pie.
Oh, it's a dimer. Between a dimer and 20. It's up there. I always watch that. I watch the sequels, too.
Yeah.
Now, I get them confused, like as far as which one's which, because there's so many of them. But I think I went to the movies and saw all the sequels. Those are funny movies, and Stifler's mom is a great character.
I mean,
I love it.
And she's still rocking and rolling on various shows and movies. Chris Klein could not act. It was painful to watch him try and act. He played the muscle-bound lacrosse guy. The main guy, Jason Biggs, didn't really take off. Maybe the one who's most successful is the redhead, the flute girl, the band camp girl, because she was on that. Was it How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah, she was on that show. She's been in some movies.
Yeah, she's done really well. And Tara Reid fell off. Tara Reid's she's lived a rough.
You didn't
she's
think
lived a rough few years of life.
Sharknado was Academy level at all.
Oh, she was in that with Ian Ziering, Steve Sanders of 90210.
Sharknado, yeah.
Was
she was the star.
You watched Sharknado?
If I'm wrong, well, no, I watched the trailer. Right. So I watched a movie the other night called Plane. I don't have a $5 or $10 question for you, but so I like Gerard Butler. I think he's good action. So if you want a mindless action movie, and Gerard Butler's in it, he's kind of an everyman that's going to kick some ass, and he's Scottish.
Okay, I'll check it out. I
saw the previews for this movie because it was out of the theater about a year ago, and I told Nat we should go see it. We talked about going to see like 10 movies in the last year. But there's nothing out there that really wants me to get out there and go to public.
Go see Dumb Money.
Usually it's on streaming within, and kind of like you and your cable package. I have all the streaming services.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's a movie called Plane where he's a pilot and he has to, crash land, and they're on this island, and he has to fight his way through because they're in the Philippines, and it's a separatist organization. They get kidnapped. So I'm all fired up that it's on Amazon for free the other day. I was like, I'm gonna watch this movie. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Totally unrealistic. They never explained any sort of details. Every character was just like there was the pensive guy that ran the airline that had no heart, that didn't want to save them because of the liability. Just let them die. And it was the airline sent in a group kind of like the A-Team.
This sounds terrible. I wasn't going to watch it anyway. Now I'm really not going to watch it.
I thought, the crash landing, ever since the movie Flight, any kind of crash landing scene, it's entertaining.
I'm a sucker for a crash landing scene. I watch airline disasters on a regular basis.
Because I fly so much too, and I shouldn't do it. I should not watch that crash.
And your brother's a pilot.
Yeah, my brother's a pilot. So, but man, oh man. Yeah, so that was fine. But then once they got to the island, I was like, okay, it'll get better. There'll be some sort of resolution here. It'll get better. And then, dude, so the thing was, the plane had got hit by lightning and they lost all power, which if you ask any pilot, planes get hit by lightning like 16, 17 times in a year. They're designed to absorb the lightning. But in this case, they had to fly on a battery. They amazingly found this island. They're on the island about to hit the trees. Oh, there's a road. So he lands it perfectly. And then, oh, wait a minute. We got the plane fixed. And so how they get off the island, I don't think I'm spoiling it for anybody. I don't really care if I do. I'm save all you for watching this. They crank it back up in a hail of gunfire, like Rambo-style gunfire, and fly off the island. And go cruise at about 300 feet to another island that's 50 miles away. Like 3 seconds of movie passes. Oh, I see the other island up ahead. And amazingly, they land with no engines at the end. Then he goes home and sees his daughter. Dude, I wanted a mindless action movie that was plausible. This was just not.
This is not plausible. By the way, Pimp on a Blimp, yes, I saw Napoleon in the theater. I thought it was actually pretty good because Joaquin Phoenix is outstanding.
That's next on my list, yeah.
Yeah, and I would, I think I mentioned Dumb Money, which is about the GameStop fiasco or whatever you want to call it.
Was that good?
I thought it was very good. It reminded me of The Big Short, which is another underrated movie that I saw. It's very simple. It's done in the same way. So I could see those once they hit cable being future fivers, if not dimers. Your Plane movie, clearly neither. American Pie, a dimer. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it brings me back into a time where I was close to that age, and you just felt like that crew was like, they were like your buddies, Yeah,
it came out when I was about 20, so, and you kind of look back, and I remember that's back when you were close enough to once being that age.
Yeah.
When you first start to miss high school.
Right.
Guys, we were,
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good like teen comedy. So I'll put that as a dimer as well. Officer and a Gentleman.
that's a fiver for me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and I quote it all the time because, like, when players
You love the "I have nowhere else to go" quote.
Yeah, like when somebody like signs a contract extension. I'm like, it's definitely Richard Gere from Officer and Gentleman.
Yeah.
He had nowhere else to go. Or
Nowhere else to
somebody
go.
gets out of the portal. I use that all the time.
This is peak Louis Gossett Jr., who won an Oscar for his role. Peak Richard Gere, who was kind of the modern day stud of his time, American Gigolo, and then of course he had a resurgence with Julia Roberts and Pretty Woman. It's a dimer for me. I love this, but we don't have many movies like this anymore. And I don't know what direction our American military is going in right now. It's kind of a scary place. But back then, this is when the military was the military. And you like Louis Gossett Jr., like that was a realist. You talk to people who are actually in the Army, in the Navy, in the armed forces, and they're the dude from Full Metal Jacket and Louis Gossett Jr., like those were very good portrayals of what it was like. They weren't worried about your feelings.
The Joe Cocker song at the end, dude.
Oh, I mean, come on. Lift our hearts up where we belong.
Where we belong.
Deborah Winger, by the way, not a fiver or a dimer for me. I find her annoying. And she apparently was really difficult to work with and thought she turned down a bunch of like mega roles because she thought she was like the next, I don't know, Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, all tied up into one, and she really wasn't. No, not even close.
Stone.
No. Finally, Home Alone. We covered this a little bit on another show about the Christmas installment. I'll be honest, I've only seen this once in my life. I'm not big into Macaulay Culkin. It's a John Hughes film, who I think is one of the best who ever did it. But I saw it once. It was a one and doneer for me.
Least favorite John Hughes film on earth. One of my least. I know it's a Christmas movie. I don't.
Some people swear by it. It's their favorite Christmas movie. I can't get there.
Joe freaking Pesci in it,
Yeah.
But I think that's what did it for me because I'm so used to Joe Pesci playing a certain type of character, and then in The Irishman, he's kind of in the same genre, but his acting chops take over, and he's this different thing. And it was his character in Home Alone was a little too cartoonish for me compared to like other comedies like The Super or. Farley died. Or no, wait a minute.
Nope, we're back.
I'm sorry, that was Mike Myers.
Okay, we're not gone. We're back for the wrap it up in 30 seconds. Anything?
Oh, did I fade out?
Yeah, we everybody faded out there for 10 seconds.
Oh my God. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that's it was kind of like I think the Joe Pesci role in that movie is what made me not like it. Bottom line.
All right. Hey, appreciate everybody tuning in once again. Don't forget the website, JC and Morgan. Appreciate the Chief Sports Network, home of many great sports shows like this, including ITG, which is underway as we speak. Some of you will head on over there. For the rest of you, we'll see you next time. For Mad Dog, for JC, it's Mike saying so long on another installment of JC and Morgan.